August 3rd, 1952. 6:47 p.m. Mayme Johnson stands in the kitchen of her brownstone on West 147th Street, preparing dinner. Through the window, she can see Harlem in its early evening rhythm. Kids playing stickball, neighbors sitting on stoops, the sounds of jazz drifting from open windows. The mail slot rattles. An envelope slides across the floor. Mayme wipes her hands on her apron and picks it up. No stamp, no return address, just her name written in crude block letters. Mayme Johnson. She opens it. Inside, a single sheet of paper. And on that paper, 10 words that will change everything. We know where you live. You have 48 hours. Leave. Below the message, a symbol she recognizes immediately, one that every black person in America knows and fears. A burning cross. And at the bottom, 3 letters, KKK. Mayme's hands start shaking. Not from fear, at least not yet. From rage. From the audacity of someone thinking they could threaten her in her own neighborhood, in her own home, in the one place where she should feel safe. She's still standing there, staring at the letter, when her husband walks through the door 15 minutes later. Ellsworth, Bumpy Johnson, takes one look at his wife's face and knows something is catastrophically wrong. In 31 years of marriage, he's seen Mayme scared maybe 3 times. This isn't scared. This is something else entirely. What happened? He asks, already moving toward her. Wordlessly, she hands him the letter. Bumpy reads it once, then again. His expression doesn't change, but Mayme sees his jaw clench, sees the vein in his temple start to pulse, sees his hands, those hands that have broken bones and signed death warrants, begin to tremble with barely contained fury. When did this arrive? His voice is dangerously quiet. 10 minutes ago. Came through the mail slot. No postage. So someone hand-delivered it. Someone walked up to our door and he stops processing. They know where we live. That's what the letter says. Bumpy walks to the window, looking out at the street with new eyes. Suddenly, every unfamiliar face is a threat. Every parked car is suspicious. Every shadow could be hiding someone watching, waiting. He turns back to Mayme. Pack a bag. You're staying with Illinois Gordon tonight. I'm not leaving my home because of some cowards with a hate letter. Mayme. No, Ellsworth. She uses his full name, which means she's serious. I've lived in this neighborhood for over 20 years. I've survived the Depression, police raids, mob wars, and everything else this city has thrown at us. I'm not running from racist threats delivered by people too scared to show their faces. Bumpy looks at the letter again, his mind already calculating. The KKK had a presence in New York in the 1920s. At their peak, they claimed over 35,000 members across the state. But by 1952, that number had dropped significantly. The organization was fractured, weakened, operating in shadows. But shadows could still kill. This isn't about bravery, Bumpy says carefully. This is about not giving them a target while I figure out who they are and what they want. What they want is to terrorize us. If I leave, they win. If you stay and something happens, he can't finish the sentence. Mayme steps close to him, placing her hand on his chest. Then you handle it, the way you've handled every other threat we've faced. But I'm not running, Ellsworth. Not from my home. Not from my life. Not from people who think burning crosses gives them power over me. And in that moment, Bumpy Johnson, the man who controls Harlem's criminal underworld, who negotiates with Mafia bosses, who survived 4 decades in a business where most men don't last 4 years, realizes he's facing an impossible choice. Keep his wife safe by sending her away, or respect her courage by letting her stay and risk everything. He makes a decision that will echo through Harlem for generations. All right, he says quietly, you stay. But if you stay, I'm calling everyone. Every associate, every ally, every person who owes me a favor. And by morning, this entire neighborhood is going to be the safest 3 blocks in New York City. He picks up the phone, makes the first call, then another, then another. By 8 p.m. that night, 37 armed men have taken positions throughout a 6-block radius around Bumpy Johnson's home. By 10 p.m., every resident on West 147th Street has been quietly notified that something serious is happening and they should stay indoors after midnight. By midnight, Harlem has locked its doors. Because when you threaten Bumpy Johnson's wife, you don't just threaten one woman. You threaten the one person he loves more than power, more than money, more than his own life. And everyone in New York is about to learn what happens when you make that mistake. Most people think of the Ku Klux Klan as a Southern phenomenon, white hooded figures burning crosses in rural Alabama or Mississippi. But that's incomplete history. In the 1920s, the KKK's second wave of power swept through northern states with shocking success. New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Ohio all saw significant Klan membership. They weren't just targeting Black Americans. They went after Catholics, Jews, immigrants, anyone who didn't fit their vision of real America. In 1924, the KKK held a massive rally in Madison Square Garden. Over 20,000 people attended. They marched through Manhattan in full regalia, and the police did nothing to stop them because dozens of officers were members themselves. At their peak in New York, the Klan claimed 35,000 to 40,000 members statewide. They controlled school boards in Queens. They influenced local elections in Staten Island and Long Island. They owned businesses, held public office, and operated with shocking openness. But by 1952, the Klan's power in New York had collapsed. Internal corruption, public scandals, and federal investigations had decimated their membership. Most estimates put active New York Klan members at fewer than 500, a shadow of their former strength. Yet those 500 were arguably more dangerous than the 35,000 had been, because they had nothing left to lose. The men who remained in the Klan by 1952 were true believers, fanatics who'd stayed loyal even as the organization crumbled around them. They operated in small cells, disconnected from any central leadership. They were unpredictable, desperate, and willing to take extreme actions to prove their movement wasn't dead. And somehow, they decided that Bumpy Johnson's wife was a target worth risking everything for. But here's what the KKK didn't understand about Harlem in 1952. The neighborhood had changed since the 1920s. It wasn't just a place Black people lived, it was a fortress, a self-contained community with its own economy, its own power structure, its own rules. White police rarely ventured into certain areas. White criminals knew better than to operate there without permission. And at the center of it all was Bumpy Johnson, who by 1952 controlled the most profitable criminal operation in Black America. He had connections that spanned from Italian Mafia families to Black nationalist organizations. He had street soldiers who'd fought in World War II and Korea, men who knew real combat, not just street violence. He had informants in the NYPD, the FBI, and the district attorney's office. The Klan members who sent that letter were operating on outdated assumptions. They thought they could intimidate a Black family the way they had in the 1920s. They thought their reputation, their history of terror, would be enough. They were catastrophically wrong. August 3rd, 1952, 11:30 p.m. The Rhythm Club on Lenox Avenue. Bumpy's unofficial headquarters. 14 men sit around a large table. These aren't street-level criminals. These are Bumpy's top-tier operators, each controlling significant pieces of Harlem's underground economy. Illinois Gordon, Bumpy's oldest friend and most trusted advisor, 61 years old, veteran of countless street wars. Junie Bird, chief enforcer, the man who handles problems that require immediate and definitive solutions. Nat Pettigrew runs the Uptown Numbers operation, handles over $150,000 in weekly bets. Eddie Schoolboy Martin, liaison to the Italian families, fluent in 4 languages, educated at City College before choosing a criminal path. James Cleanhead Thompson controls Harlem's protection rackets, employs over 200 street-level collectors, and 9 others, each representing a different aspect of Bumpy's operation. On the table in the center, the letter. Who delivered it? Junie asks. Unknown, Bumpy replies. Mayme was in the kitchen, heard the mail slot, but didn't see anyone. By the time she got to the door, they were gone. Could be a lone wolf, Eddie suggests. Some racist with delusions of grandeur trying to scare Mrs. Johnson. Could be, Bumpy acknowledges. But I'm not operating on could be. I'm operating on worst-case scenario. And worst case is that this is an organized cell with resources and a plan. He stands, beginning to pace, a habit when he's thinking strategically. Here's what we know. They hand-delivered the letter, which means they've been surveilling our home. They know our address, probably know our routines. The 48-hour deadline suggests they're planning something specific. Either they're giving us time to leave so they can move in and establish territory, or they're giving us time to panic while they prepare an attack. An attack. That sounds skeptical. On Mayme Johnson? In the middle of Harlem? That's suicide. Maybe. But desperate people do suicidal things. And the Klan has a history of martyrdom operations. They'll sacrifice men if they think it advances their cause. Illinois Gordon, who's been silent until now, speaks up. Bumpy, I've known you since we were kids running numbers for Stephanie St. Clair. I've never seen you this concerned. What aren't you telling us? Bumpy stops pacing. 3 weeks ago, I got approached by a black nationalist group. Young men, late 20s, organized, intelligent. They wanted protection for a rally they're planning. Civil rights march down 125th Street. Big event. They're expecting 5,000 people. So, Junie asks. So I said yes. I agreed to provide security. Make sure the march happens without interference from the cops or from white agitators. It's good for the neighborhood, good for the movement, and, frankly, good for business. Shows the community that we're not just criminals, we're protectors. He picks up the letter again. But if word got out that I'm supporting civil rights organizing, that I'm helping black activists challenge white authority, certain groups would see that as a declaration of war. The Klan, white supremacist organizations, they'd view it as me stepping out of my place. As a black man getting too powerful, too influential. The room goes quiet as everyone processes this. You think this letter is about more than Mayme, Eddie says slowly. You think it's about stopping you from supporting the march. I think it's possible. Threaten my wife. Make me choose between her safety and my public commitments. If I pull security from the march, it fails or turns violent, and the civil rights movement takes a hit. If I keep my commitment, I'm putting Mayme at risk. Either way, they win. Or, Junie says, his voice hard, we find out who sent the letter and make them regret every decision that led to this moment. Bumpy nods. That's exactly what we're going to do. But carefully. Methodically, because if we overreact, if we start a visible war with white supremacists in the streets of New York, we bring down federal attention. FBI, Justice Department, newspapers, everything we've built gets exposed to scrutiny we can't afford. So how do we handle this? Illinois asks. Bumpy sits back down, steepling his fingers, the gesture he uses when he's about to lay out a complete strategy. First, security. Mayme refuses to leave the house, which I respect, but which terrifies me. So the house becomes a fortress. Round-the-clock protection. Armed guards at every entrance. Nobody gets within 50 feet without being identified and cleared. He points to Cleanhead Thompson. James, you pull 30 of your best protection guys. Split them into 3 shifts. 8 hours each. I want eyes on every approach to that block. Done. Second, intelligence. We need to know who's active in Klan operations in New York right now. Eddie, you reach out to our contacts in the police department. Find out if there have been any reports of Klan activity, any investigations, any informants who might have information. Eddie nods. I've a detective in the 28th precinct who owes us. I'll start there. Third, message. We need to send a signal that this kind of threat won't be tolerated. Not against my wife, not against anyone in this neighborhood. But it has to be proportional. We can't go scorched earth and bring down heat we can't handle. What did you have in mind? Junie asks. Bumpy's expression hardens. I want to find out who delivered that letter. And when we do, I want them to understand, deeply, permanently understand, that there are consequences for threatening people under my protection. He looks around the table. Questions. Illinois raises a hand. What about the march? Are you still providing security? Absolutely. That doesn't change. The march happens as planned. If anything, this makes me more committed to it. Because if we back down from threats, if we let fear dictate our actions, then they've already won. The whole point of the civil rights movement is that we don't back down anymore. We stand. We fight. We demand what's ours. His voice rises slightly, rare for Bumpy, who usually maintains complete emotional control. They thought they could threaten my wife and make me retreat? They thought wrong. By the time this is over, every Klan member in New York is going to know that Harlem isn't territory they can intimidate. That black people in this city aren't victims they can terrorize without consequence. He stands again, signaling the meeting's end. Gentlemen, we have 42 hours until their deadline. Let's make sure those 42 hours are the worst of their lives. August 4th, 1952, 9:15 a.m. Eddie Schoolboy. Martin sits in a diner in Midtown Manhattan across from Detective Frank Russo of the NYPD's 28th Precinct. Russo is 43, Italian, and deeply compromised. He's been on Bumpy's payroll for 6 years, feeding information about pending raids and investigations. Tell me about Klan activity in the city, Eddie says without preamble. Russo stirs his coffee nervously. That's a dangerous question, Eddie. FBI's been investigating white supremacist groups since '47. If they find out I'm sharing intel. Frank, someone threatened Bumpy Johnson's wife. If we're having this conversation, it means Bumpy thinks you can help. If you can't, then maybe you're not as valuable as we thought. The implied threat is clear. Russo swallows hard. All right. Yes, there's active Klan presence in the city, mostly on Long Island and Staten Island. Maybe 300 to 500 members total, split into a dozen cells. They're not organized like they used to be. No central leadership, no real coordination. Just local groups doing local operations. Any recent activity in Manhattan? Not that I've heard. They mostly stick to the outer boroughs where they've got more sympathetic populations. Manhattan's too diverse, too hostile. They get shut down fast. So if someone delivered a Klan threat letter in Harlem, that would be unusual? Russo leans forward. That would be insane. Harlem's about as hostile to the Klan as territory gets. They'd have to be either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, or desperate. Eddie suggests. Maybe. Look, there's one thing. About 3 weeks ago, there was a meeting in Queens. Some kind of inter-cell gathering. FBI's been trying to get an informant in there, but no luck. Word is they're planning something, some kind of public action to prove they're still relevant. Eddie's mind races. 3 weeks ago, the same time Bumpy agreed to provide security for the Civil Rights March. This meeting in Queens, did they discuss targets? I don't know specifics, but the general theme was making a statement, showing that white America still has power. There was talk about going after uppity black leaders who were getting too influential. The pieces click into place. Eddie stands, dropping money on the table. You've been helpful, Frank. Stay available. He leaves the diner and immediately calls Bumpy from a payphone. Meanwhile, across town, Nat Pettigrew is having a very different conversation. He's in the back room of a barber shop in Harlem, talking to an elderly man named Marcus Webb. Marcus is 74 years old and worked as a porter at Grand Central Terminal for 43 years before retiring. He's also the neighborhood's unofficial historian and gossip hub. Nothing happens in Harlem without Marcus hearing about it. Unusual white folks in the neighborhood. Marcus repeats Nat's question, his voice gravelly with age. Son, we get unusual white folks through here all the time. tourists, police, social workers, journalists. But if you're asking if I've seen anyone who looked out of place, anyone who seemed like they were scoping things rather than visiting. Yeah, two men. Day before yesterday. Nat leans forward. Describe them. Both white, 30s or 40s. Short hair. One had a scar on his left cheek. Real noticeable. They were driving a black Ford, maybe a 48 or 49 model. Parked on the corner of 147th and 7th for about 20 minutes, just watching. Didn't get out. Didn't talk to anyone. Just watched. You get the license plate? Couldn't see it from where I was sitting. But I remember thinking it was odd because they weren't trying to blend in. Most white folks who come through here, they're either clearly police or clearly lost. These guys were neither. They had purpose. Nat stands, shaking Marcus's hand. You see them again, you call this number immediately. He hands over a slip of paper with the Rhythm Club's phone number. This about that letter Mrs. Johnson got. Nat pauses. How do you know about that? Marcus smiles. Boy, I'm 74 years old. I know everything that happens in this neighborhood. You think Mayme Johnson gets a threatening letter and word doesn't spread? Half of Harlem's ready to go to war over it. You want my advice? Always. Find whoever sent that letter fast. Because if you don't, the neighborhoods go to find them. And when angry civilians start trying to be vigilantes, people get hurt. Innocent people. Nat nods slowly. Marcus is right. The longer this drags out, the more dangerous it becomes. Not just for Bumpy's operation, but for the entire community. By 2 p.m. that afternoon, Bumpy has assembled a clearer picture. The Klan is planning some kind of public action. They see Bumpy's support of the civil rights march as a threat. Two men matching descriptions of potential Klan operatives were surveilling his home. The situation is time-sensitive and potentially explosive. He calls another meeting at the Rhythm Club. This time, only his closest advisors, Illinois, Junie, Eddie, and Nat. We're not waiting for them to make the first move, Bumpy announces. We're going on offense. Eddie, your cop says there was a meeting in Queens. Give me the location. Nat, your witness saw a black Ford. I want every black Ford in a 10-mile radius identified and tracked. Junie, he looks at his enforcer. Get ready, because when we find these people, I'm not interested in talking. August 4th, 1952, 11:47 p.m. A warehouse in Queens. Specifically, a defunct textile factory that's been abandoned since 1947 when the owner declared bankruptcy and fled to Florida. Inside, 17 men sit in folding chairs arranged in a rough circle. All white, all wearing ordinary clothes. No robes, no hoods. This isn't the theatrical Klan of the 1920s. This is the underground, desperate version that survives by staying invisible. At the center stands Roger Kinsley, 51 years old, a former police officer fired in 1949 for brutality complaints. He's taken over leadership of the Queens/Brooklyn Klan cell. Roughly 40 members, though only the most committed show up to meetings anymore. Gentlemen, Kinsley begins, 2 days ago we sent a message to that criminal and his wife in Harlem. By now, they've received it. By tomorrow, our deadline expires. A younger man, Thomas Birch, 28 mechanic by day, racist by night, speaks up. What if they don't leave? What if they ignore us? Kinsley smiles coldly. Then we escalate. We show them that white authority still means something in this city. We make an example that every black agitator will remember. Ow, another man asks. There's a march planned. 2 weeks from now. Civil rights demonstration. That Johnson is providing security. If we disrupt it, if we create chaos that his security can't contain, we show the world that he's not as powerful as people think. We show that black organization can still be broken. A man in the back, William Cortland, 45, owns a small grocery store, looks uncomfortable. Roger, that's a lot of witnesses. A lot of potential exposure. The FBI's already investigating us. If we do something public, the FBI's been investigating us for years and hasn't shut us down, Kinsley interrupts. Because we're careful. Because we're smart. This action will be the same. Surgical. Strategic. We're not burning crosses on lawns anymore. We're dismantling their infrastructure. What none of them know is that 50 yards away, in another section of the abandoned factory, 3 men are listening to every word. Junie Bird, Illinois Gordon, and a specialist tracker named Raymond Tracker Mills, a former Army scout who could follow a trail through a crowded city as easily as through a forest. They'd found a location through Eddie's police contact, who'd gotten it from an FBI surveillance report. They'd infiltrated the building hours before the meeting started, setting up listening positions. And they've heard everything. As the Klan meeting breaks up around midnight, Junie signals his team. They follow 3 specific targets, the men who'd been identified as the most likely to have delivered the letter. One of them is Thomas Birch, who drives a black 1948 Ford. They follow him to a small house in Queens. Watch him enter. Wait. At 2:30 a.m., Junie makes a decision. They move. Thomas Birch wakes to a hand over his mouth and a gun against his temple. Don't move. Don't scream. Don't even breathe heavy, Junie whispers. Nod if you understand. Birch nods frantically, his eyes wide with terror. Good. Now we're going to have a conversation. A very quiet, very honest conversation. And your survival depends on you giving me the right answers. Understood. Another nod. Junie removes his hand, but keeps the gun in place. Did you deliver a letter to a house on West 147th Street 2 days ago? I don't. The gun presses harder. Wrong answer. Try again. Yes. Yes, I delivered it. Kinsley told me to. Said it was part of the plan. What plan? To scare the Johnson woman. Make her leave so we could show we still have power in the city. You threatened Bumpy Johnson's wife because you wanted to feel powerful? Junie's voice is filled with contempt. Do you have any idea how stupid that is? It wasn't my idea. Kinsley planned it. I just delivered the letter. That's called being an accomplice, genius. You're just as guilty. Birch is crying now, silent tears running down his face. Please, I have a wife. Kids. I was just following orders. Following orders. Junie almost laughs. Where have I heard that before? Let me tell you something about following orders. They don't save you when you're following the wrong people. He leans closer. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything about Kinsley's plan. Every detail. Every person involved. Every target. And if you leave anything out, if you lie even a little bit, you're going to disappear. Not killed, just gone. Vanished. And your wife and kids will spend the rest of their lives wondering what happened to you. Over the next 45 minutes, Thomas Birch tells them everything. The plan to disrupt the march. The backup cells waiting to act if Bumpy didn't comply with the threat. The contacts in the police department who'd been promised they'd look the other way. The weapons stashed in 3 different locations across Queens and Brooklyn. By 3:30 a.m., Junie has what he needs. One more question, he says. Why Bumpy Johnson? Why his wife? There are other black leaders in this city. Why target him specifically? Birch swallows hard. Because Kinsley said Johnson was different. Said he had real power. Said if we could break him, make him look weak, it would send a message to every other black person in New York that nobody's untouchable. Junie stands up, holstering his weapon. Tell Kinsley something for me. Tell him that Bumpy Johnson got his message. And tell him that Bumpy Johnson is sending one back. Anyone who threatens his family doesn't get warnings. Doesn't get second chances. Doesn't get mercy. They just get consequences. He walks to the door, then pauses. Oh, and Thomas, you're leaving New York. Tonight. You, your wife, your kids, pack a bag and go. I don't care where. Just be gone by sunrise. Because if I see you in this city again, our next conversation won't be this pleasant. They leave Birch sitting on his bed, shaking and broken. By 4 a.m., they're back in Harlem, reporting to Bumpy. August 5th, 1952. The deadline day. Bumpy Johnson spends the morning making phone calls. Not to criminals, to community leaders. Preachers, business owners, school principals, neighborhood organizers. The message is simple. Stay indoors tonight. Keep your family safe. Something's being handled, and it's going to happen quietly, but it's going to happen. By noon, word has spread through Harlem like wildfire. The neighborhood understands. When Bumpy Johnson says stay inside, you stay inside. Not out of fear, but out of respect and self-preservation. By 6 p.m., West 147th Street is eerily quiet. No kids playing. No neighbors on stoops. Windows are dark or curtained. The usual vibrant energy of Harlem evening life has vanished. By 8 p.m., 47 armed men have taken positions throughout a 12-block radius. Not just Bumpy's people, volunteers from the neighborhood, veterans, shop owners, working men who've decided that if the Klan thinks they can threaten Harlem, they need to be taught otherwise. This isn't just about protecting Bumpy's wife anymore. It's become something bigger. A statement that Harlem protects its OWN at 9:30 p.m. Roger Kinsley and 6 Klan members drive into Harlem in 3 cars. They're armed, pistols, a shotgun, bats wrapped in barbed wire. Their plan is simple. Drive past Bumpy's house, fire shots into the air, throw a Molotov cocktail through a window. Create terror. Make a statement. Then disappear before anyone can respond. They make it exactly 3 blocks into Harlem before every car is surrounded. It happens so fast that none of them have time to react. One moment they're driving. The next, their cars are blocked by vehicles that appeared from nowhere. 30 men materialize out of the shadows, all armed, all moving with military precision. Roger Kinsley reaches for his gun. I wouldn't, Illinois Gordon says, his weapon aimed directly at Kinsley's head through the car window. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and out of your goddamn minds for coming here. Drop your weapons and get out of the cars. Now, for a moment, it looks like Kinsley might try to fight. Then he sees the sheer number of men surrounding them, sees the weapons, sees the cold, determined expressions of people who are absolutely willing to kill him if necessary. He drops his gun. The others follow suit. They're pulled from their cars and forced to their knees in the middle of the street. The entire scene is illuminated by car headlights, a makeshift theater for what comes next. Bumpy Johnson walks out of the shadows. He doesn't say anything at first, just stands there, looking at these 7 men who thought they could threaten his wife, who thought they could bring Klan terror to Harlem, who thought their racism gave them power. My name is Ellsworth Johnson, he finally says, his voice carrying in the quiet night. Most people call me Bumpy. You threatened my wife, my family, my home. Do you understand what that means? Kinsley spits on the ground. You're just a... Junie Bird hits him. Not hard enough to cause permanent damage, but hard enough to shut him up and split his lip. Let me finish, Bumpy says calmly. You threatened my wife because you thought your white skin and your Klan membership made you untouchable. You thought you could terrorize black people the way your organization has been doing for decades. You thought fear was your weapon. He walks closer, standing directly in front of Kinsley. But here's what you didn't understand. Harlem isn't the South. Harlem isn't some isolated rural community where you can burn crosses and lynch people without consequence. Harlem is organized. Harlem is strong. And Harlem protects its own. He gestures to the men surrounding them, a mix of criminals and civilians, all united in this moment. You wanted to make a statement? Fine. Here's mine. Anyone who threatens this neighborhood, anyone who thinks they can bring hate and violence into these streets, will face immediate and overwhelming consequences. Not from the police, not from the government, from us, the people who actually live here. He turns to Illinois. Strip them. What? Kinsley's bravado cracks. You heard me. Every piece of clothing. Everything. Leave them in their underwear. Over the next 5 minutes, as the Klan members are stripped of their clothes, their weapons are collected and destroyed. Their cars are driven away to be dismantled for parts. Their identification, wallets, keys, anything personal, is photographed and documented. Here's what happens next, Bumpy tells them. You're going to walk. Walk out Harlem. Walk back to wherever you came from. And while you walk, every single person you pass is going to see you humiliated, see you powerless, see you as the cowards you actually are. You can't. One of the men starts. I already have. And here's the best part. I'm letting you live. Not because you deserve it, but because I want you to carry this memory for the rest of your lives. Every time you think about putting on a hood, every time you think about threatening someone, you'll remember this night. Remember being stripped and sent home like misbehaving children. He leans close to Kinsley. And if I ever hear your name in connection with any threat against any person in this neighborhood, you won't get this mercy again. Understood. Kinsley, beaten and humiliated, nods. Good. Now, get out of my neighborhood. The 7 men, stripped to their underwear, bleeding and broken, begin the long walk out of Harlem. Behind them, dozens of residents emerge from their homes, drawn by the commotion. They watch in silence as the Klan members shuffle past, their power and bravado completely destroyed. By midnight, it's over. The Klan members are gone. The street is being cleaned up. Armed guards remain in place, but the immediate crisis has passed. Bumpy walks home to find Mayme waiting on the front steps. It's done, he tells her. She stands, wraps her arms around him. Thank you. You should have left when I asked. I know, but if I had, we would have missed the chance to show them that we're not afraid. That Harlem isn't afraid. They stand there for a moment, husband and wife, survivors of yet another threat in a lifetime of threats. Did you kill them? Mayme asks quietly. No. Why not? Because killing them would have made them martyrs. Would have started a war we don't need. But humiliating them, sending them home broken and powerless, that sends a better message. It shows that we don't need violence to win. We just need strength and unity. Mayme nods against his chest. I love you, Ellsworth. I love you too. And I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from receiving that letter in the first place. You can't protect me from everything, but you can stand beside me when bad things happen. And you did. That's enough. August 18th, 1952. 2 weeks after the Klan threat. The Civil Rights March proceeds exactly as planned. 5,000 people walked down 125th Street, demanding equal rights, equal treatment, equal dignity. Bumpy's security team, supplemented by volunteers from the neighborhood, ensures not a single incident disrupts the march. No violence, no counter-protesters, no problems. The New York Amsterdam News runs a front-page story about the march's success, though they don't mention Bumpy Johnson's involvement. He prefers it that way. What they do mention is a curious incident 2 weeks prior. 7 white men were found wandering in Queens in their underwear, claiming they'd been robbed in Harlem. Police investigated, but found no evidence of criminal activity. The men eventually recanted their story and left the city. No charges were filed. The Klan cell in Queens dissolved within 3 months. Roger Kinsley moved to Pennsylvania. Most of the other members simply disappeared from the organization. They were to continue broken by that one night of humiliation. And in Harlem, the story became legend. The night Bumpy Johnson defended his wife not with violence, but with overwhelming force and strategic humiliation. The night an entire neighborhood locked its doors and stood ready to fight. The night the Klan learned that some places are beyond their reach. But here's what most people missed about that story. It wasn't really about Bumpy Johnson versus the KKK. It was about a community coming together to protect one of its own. It was about civilians and criminals standing side by side because the threat was bigger than their differences. It was about neighborhoods saying, we don't care who you are or what power you think you have. You don't threaten our people. Mayme Johnson lived in that brownstone on West 147th Street for another 16 years. She never received another threat, never felt unsafe in her own home again. When Bumpy died in 1968, over 1,000 people attended his funeral. Many came because he was powerful. Many came because he'd helped them in some way, financially, politically, or personally. But a surprising number came because of that night in 1952, Because he'd shown them what community protection really means. Because he'd proven that standing together, Black people in Harlem could face down any threat, even one as historically terrifying as the KKK. That's the real legacy of what happened when the Klan threatened Bumpy Johnson's wife. Not violence, not revenge, not death. Unity, strength, and the absolute refusal to be intimidated by people who trade in fear. Harlem locked its doors that night, but when it opened them again the next morning, it did so knowing something it hadn't known before. No threat, no matter how historical, how organized, how filled with hate, could break a community that chose to stand together. That's power, real power. And that's why New York never forgot what happened the night someone made the mistake of threatening Mayme Johnson.